Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel, and here's a headline from the Crypto Basic. Tensions rise in XRP community as Ripple reverses stance on XRPL smart contracts. Oh my god, it sounds like trouble in paradise. Not so fast, Mr. Mouth Breather. Not so fast. I would say that there's vigorous discussion on this particular matter. And so a couple days ago, when this was first in the headlines, I did make a video, just so you know, in case you missed it, highlighting a lot of the specifics of what was going on, what Ripple said they wanted to do, although it was somewhat vague because they're kind of in the research stages of, coming together, working with the community, to a proposal on what programmability, as they say, would look like on the XRP ledger. And that, when they say programmability, they're of course just talking about smart contracts being available on layer 1 on the XRP ledger, which I think would be incredible as long as it doesn't ruin what XRP is famously great at, which is payments, broadly speaking. So, blazing fast transactions that are so cheap that they might as well be free. As long as that doesn't get changed, I don't personally care. Now, since I already went through that material in terms of what it means, what Ripple was pushing for, I'm not going to cover their original post. I'm not going to cite what the original proposed amendment was for that, which was called hooks. I'm not going to go into in great detail. I'm going to let people speak their own minds in which some of the stuff comes up. I'm not going to talk about a lot of what I said in that video, talking about the history of the how and how it came to be. I'm not going to talk about real world examples that were actually cited by developers on the XRP ledger about why this would functionally be useful. I already did that a couple days or so ago. But I said that I would, so I'm doing it now. Things have slowed down enough I can make this video. I said that I would go ahead and cover some of the quote-unquote drama, which is a little bit too... I mean, it's more like there are people that are passionate, including developers, within the XRP ecosystem and the developer community, who... you can tell that they care about what they're saying, even if they disagree. And so that doesn't mean that it's like high school gossip or drama or something like that. It's more like there's passion because these people care about what happens, and they're still being adults. It's not like this some sort of juvenile occurrence here that we should be laughing at. That's not the case, just to be clear. That's why, as I told Mr. Mouth Breather at the outset of this video, it is not trouble in paradise. Not so fast. And so here you can see, and I did share this, I want to set the table just a little bit with this so that David Schwartz initially, for years and years and years, who of course is one of the creators of XRP and the XRP ledger, he's been against smart contract capabilities being added to the XRP ledger. And so here you can see a post, a screen grab of one of his posts that was shared by an XRP community member. This is from July 29th of 2020. And on the topic, David Schwartz at the time, 4 years ago, wrote, "We were right that adding smart contracts makes a platform worse for payments. And we were right that it would introduce fee instability, performance issues, and have lots of attack surface." Okay, so that's in part what he said there. So he was clearly against it, but it's okay to learn new things and then have new opinions. I would hope that all of you listening won't have exactly the same opinions on various topics in 10 years that you have today. Even if your core beliefs are the same, okay, cool. Something will probably change, right? That's got to be okay. That's perfectly reasonable. And so David Schwartz acknowledged, yeah, he changed his mind. That's what smart people do. And so, excuse me, here's what he said. In response to that, he said, "I've recently become convinced that it's possible to come up with a proposal for smart contracts on XRP Ledger that is, number one, small and safe enough to deploy on mainnet without significant risk to things like transaction price stability and performance for payments." Now, I would say, just my personal opinion, that's the thing that I've been most concerned about, because if XRP stops being good at what it's historically good for, I don't even know what that would do to market dynamics, because people will respond to that in not necessarily in a good way. I don't think we need to tinker with that. Then he says, number two, a jumping off point for building for complex and powerful features over time, should the demand be there and the initial proposal prove itself. And number three, sufficient to enable meaningful real-world use cases even in the first release. I'm hoping that means this isn't something that's experimented with and researched for 2 years before anything goes live, but rather something that could be deployed on a much faster timeline and still hit all three of the points above. One could argue that hooks already meets all three of these criteria. I'm not quite convinced it meets the first, though. Ooh, slam, son. Okay, so This is where the trouble in paradise. Not exactly. It's he's sharing his opinion, okay? And so David Schwartz is saying he's not yet convinced that the Hooks Amendment, which has never been passed on the XRP ledger, which is smart contract functionality, he's not convinced that if implemented, it wouldn't cause problems in terms of what XRP is good at its core. Fair enough critique. So now, of course, now mind you, XRPL Labs and Wietse Wind, which created the Hooks Amendment for the XRP ledger, since it never got approved, they created the Zahao blockchain, which is a side chain, and they implemented it there. And in production, it today is working as Wietse Wind, I'll show you, he argues it absolutely does work. Now, of course, perhaps David Schwartz might argue, okay, but we don't know for sure if it would work on the XRP ledger because the scale is different, obviously. Way more transactions, this or that, different environment. But here is what Wietse Wind had to say. So this is an open letter to the XRP ledger ecosystem and stakeholders. I'm going to go through this whole thing because I want you to see the vigorous debate and conversations and perspective that has led up to this point, and we'll stay on top of this thing because it matters to all of us. If the developer community, and let's say more importantly, obviously, the validators, and there's some overlap there. Let's be real. If they go off the rails and do something that isn't good, I would want to know. I don't think that they'd do something that's not in the best interest of the XRP ledger. But then there's the question of since we're all humans, could mistakes be made? And the answer obviously is yes, they could. I don't know the probability here, but that's why I think that we need to keep watching all of this. But here he wrote the following, and this is Wietse Wind, founder of XRPL Labs, and the Hooks Amendment, which is now live on the Zahao network instead of the XRP ledger. So he says, "Dear Ripple developer community and XRP ledger enthusiasts," ooh, that's me. 4 years ago, XRPL Labs introduced the vision for Hooks, a groundbreaking Layer 1 smart contract solution for the XRP ledger mainnet. Despite initial skepticism and limited support, we persevered, transforming this concept into a fully fledged, battle-tested implementation. The journey hasn't been easy. We've navigated through political hurdles and pushback, remaining steadfast in our commitment to innovation. As Ripple's own CTO, David Schwartz, acknowledged, this could be, quote, the most significant addition to the XRP ledger since inception, end quote. Our efforts intended for mainnet culminated with the launch of Zahao. Hooks found their home at Zahao, offering a production environment finally allowing builders to innovate with Hooks. We designed and built Hooks and poured in all our excitement, passion, and good faith we have. It would be a shame if we end up allowing only Zahao to reap the innovative benefits of our endeavor. It is therefore with mixed emotions that we read Ripple's recent blog post seemingly embracing the concept of Layer 1 smart contracts, the very idea we proposed and championed years ago. While we're glad to see this shift in perspective, we can't help but feel that this realization comes frustratingly late and at a cost to those who have been driving innovation in the ecosystem. The sudden change in opinion and narrative is surprising. 3 months ago, David Schwartz, the CTO of Ripple, shared a clear message at XRP Ledger Apex. The XRP Ledger mainnet was a fixed function ledger, and that's a quote for those who are not looking, fixed function ledger, and smart contracts belonged on other networks, such as the EVM sidechain and Zahao. Now, Ripple is committed to bring native smart contracts to XRP Ledger mainnet. It is hard to coherently and sustainably work towards a thriving ecosystem with such whimsical pivots by the organization consistently pushing for the direction of the core protocol. Whew. So this is why Mr. Mouth Breather was saying, trouble and power, with lots of mouth breathing. Oh my God, stop breathing out your mouth, you freaking bitch. But I can understand if I try and put my feet in his shoes, why he'd be frustrated. For years and years, he's pushing this, and it just wouldn't happen. And he got so frustrated to the point where he's like, fine, we'll make our own blockchain. And they did. And they launched it. And good for them, honestly. I mean, I'm certainly supportive of it. Keep innovating. Go for it. But I can understand the frustration after all these years and pushing for this, and then there's this sudden, snap of a finger seemingly, and then there's just this 180-degree flip from Ripple. Now, of course, it should be embraced. I would certainly argue that, and I think that the vast majority in our ecosystem, developer or even just enthusiasts like me and you, I think most are happy to see this. So that part's good. It's just, I'm just saying, if I'm Wietse and did all this work and pushed it for years, didn't get it, made my own blockchain, and then Ripple's like, oh, just kidding, we actually do like it. Now I can understand where he's coming from. That's all that I'm saying here. And, if Ripple wasn't convinced them back then, and now they are, including David Schwartz, I can understand that as well. I'm just saying I can understand the frustration of Wietse's side, and then I can understand if genuinely opinions change at Ripple, including David Schwartz, and they want to move forward with it. Okay, I get that. And I'm glad. Again, I don't. If your opinion has changed, don't pretend like it hasn't. So that part's good, most certainly here, right? But anyway, he continues here, and he says the lack of direct communication from Ripple's leadership about this pivotal change in stance and the reasons for it is disappointing. Learning about such a significant pivot through back channels rather than through open, direct dialogue speaks volumes about the current state of collaboration within our ecosystem. Moreover, the suggestion of exploring alternative technologies or iterations of hooks without involving the very architects of the original implementation is both perplexing and concerning. It raises questions about Ripple's commitment to genuine community collaboration and respect for the contributions of ecosystem developers. We now stand at a critical juncture. Ripple faces a clear choice: embrace and support the existing proven hooks technology on the mainnet, or pursue a separate path that risks alienating dedicated developers and fracturing the ecosystem. The ball is firmly in Ripple's court. We await a comprehensive proposal that demonstrates a genuine commitment to supporting community-driven innovation. So I'll pause to say here, I did see one of the critiques as, somebody read this and took this as, so basically we'd say what you're saying is, you're going to throw, I'm paraphrasing here, but something like you're throwing a temper tantrum if Ripple doesn't use the technology that you've created. And I'm sitting here, well, first of all, again, like I said, I understand the frustration on his part, but Ripple, to their credit, they have made it. I thought they made it clear personally. Maybe Wietse doesn't feel this way. So, but anyway, I think they made it clear, and they certainly didn't following up with this, as you'll see, that they do want the developer community to be and broader community to be involved in discussion on this. They didn't mince words about that. So that would include Wietse Wind and all of XRPL Labs. Still, if there wasn't sufficient communication, and from Wietse's perspective, there wasn't before this launch, that's a little strange because they did cite hooks, specifically Ripple did in their blog release. And if Wietse didn't feel like he had sufficient knowledge of this, and he says he heard through back channels, that's surprising, I would say. I'd say, if anything, that's like a faux pas, and then maybe like somebody's being socially awkward or something. I don't know. Like you would think you'd want to make sure that they're included in this, but apparently they were not, at least initially. But it's also true. Don't forget, because again, he's saying, hey, he's warning, Ripple, don't alienate the broader developer community. The good news is Ripple doesn't have the power to push this thing through. They have a minority position as it pertains to validators. They do not get to, as some sort of dictator, come in and say, this shall be what is like, they don't get to. So that's the good news. They don't get exactly what they want unless the validators and broader community, which a lot of like developers, like I said, are validators. They don't get that unless the community says yes, broadly speaking, specifically validators, of course, right? So that's the good part. And so we're gonna hash this out as a community one way or another, because there's gonna be votes to any amendment that's put forward, right? There's gonna be votes. And the default vote, just so you know, it's set to no. So you have to proactively change it to yes if you want to vote to pass an amendment. Anyway, Wietse continues. This proposal should clearly outline how Ripple intends to leverage the years of development and real-world application that Hooks has undergone, rather than attempting to reinvent the wheel. XRPL Labs has invested years and resources into advancing the XRP Ledger ecosystem. We've demonstrated our commitment time and again. Now it's Ripple's turn to show its dedication to the community that has long supported and advanced the XRP Ledger. The future of smart contracts on the XRP Ledger hangs in the balance. Ripple's next moves will definitely show whether it truly values ecosystem contributions or prefers a more centralized, corporate-driven approach to development. Well, I'll pause to say, fair enough statement, but again, even if Ripple takes that approach, it will be to their own detriment because you can't take a centralized approach since they don't have the power to control the ledger. Like, full stop. They just don't. So they could act in that way, but they would, honestly, they would just alienate a bunch of people. Who would have a positive opinion of them if they did that? They need to make sure that they're fostering genuine conversation. Like, they've got to do that, right? Anyway, and then he wraps up by saying, we remain hopeful that Ripple will make the right choice, one that respects the work of community developers, leverages existing innovations, and strengthens the entire XRP Ledger ecosystem. The potential for greatness is there. It's up to Ripple to seize it. Sincerely, Wietse Wind, Director, XRPL Labs. So there you go. Now, there was a response to that pretty quickly from David Schwartz. And here's what he wrote directly to Wietse Wind. He said, Wietse, to be fair, the Ripple X team had a call with you before any post went live. Ripple supported and funded hooks from the beginning, and we told you many times we'd support hooks as an amendment on mainnet. I think there's a lot of innovation in hooks as XRPL Labs originally proposed, but I believe some updates could make it a better option for the XRPL mainnet. You're right that I've changed my thoughts on programmability recently, and you absolutely recognize the need for it much earlier. So I'll pause to say kudos to David Schwartz for giving credit where it's due. I think that's a very, well, you'd expect that from him. He's always, like, I will tell you this, David Schwartz comes across to me anyway as like one of the nicest humans that has ever existed. He is honestly sometimes unreasonably nice to people who are being complete jerks to him. Like, and I just look at some stuff and I'm like, wow, you're just being nothing but respectful even to these people. I'm like, wow. And so, of course, you would expect that from him. I think that's genuinely who he is. I've not met him, but I suspect that's genuinely the type of person that he is. I think he's being honest when he says, hey, credit to you. You recognize something that I didn't recognize first. I think that's cool. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, then he says, the Ripple X team specifically put this blog post out while in the research phase to continue the conversation and work together, hopefully with you and others, on what is the best approach for programmability on XRPL mainnet. And anything put forth from our side will entail a community-driven approach. Okay, now, Wietse Wind did respond to that, and he's saying that something that David Schwartz said actually isn't true. Because, I remind you, Wietse said that he only heard through back channels that Ripple was going to start pushing for Layer 1 smart contracts. David Schwartz then said, well, you had a phone call with the Ripple X team. And so I don't think David would lie about that. It means that he believed that. But Wietse Wind responded saying no. He wrote the following: there was no call. There was a brief message, not from decision makers, in between other messages about a change of heart regarding Layer 1 composability. I'm very happy to see the change of heart and excited for what is coming to mainnet, with or without that being hooks as we developed. Any composability is progress. Also, as expressed many times before, I'm very grateful for the resources provided by Ripple to build and audit hooks. The above things are not what my posts are about. My letter is about Ripple pivoting without further explanation. My letter is about explaining to the many people who got confused, sent me direct messages, etc., what my view is. My post is about hopefully making people realize for the future what the effects of uncertainty, indecisiveness, pivots can have on the builders and ecosystem. I hope my post doesn't come across as destructive or even angry. If my post results in considering the perspective I'm describing when future decisions are made, I think it was well worth the write-up. Okay, and so fair enough. And I do think he's correct that Ripple could have gone a little bit further in their blog explaining why they have a change of heart. But for some reason, they didn't feel that it was particularly appropriate to do so in that blog. And I covered that, I can't remember if I covered literally the whole thing, but I covered major points from it in my video a couple days ago when this news came out. But to best of my recollection, I think that's true. I don't recall them ever explaining why they're pivoting. They're just talking about why it would be great to have what they're calling programmability on Layer 1 on the XRP ledger. Now, not surprisingly, and you can kind of tell by Wietse Wind's not the only one that wasn't happy with that blog post from Ripple when it was the official coming out of, hey, we have a change of heart, yet we're for Layer 1 smart contracts on the XRP ledger. Since that didn't go over well, David Schwartz followed up the next day with some clarifications, and so he wrote the following on X. Seems like there's confusion over the programmability blog post we put out yesterday, so let me clear a few points up. Ripple simply cannot and absolutely doesn't want to unilaterally change the XRP ledger. The blog post is Ripple saying that we see the value in bringing programmability to XRPL mainnet in addition to what's already happening with the EVM sidechain, and are making this a priority now, and we're committed to putting out a design proposal for community review. Instead of coming out with a proposal already baked, our intent was to be transparent and show where we'll now be focusing internal resources and priorities due to the due diligence and come back to the community with our thoughts. So I'll pause and say this. Since I'm not a developer, I'm coming at it from a little bit of a different perspective. When I read that blog post from Ripple, I just thought, oh, cool. I was like, yeah, they changed the heart. Okay, awesome. And fine, I admit, of course, like I didn't know why that was, but as is the case with private companies, when they make a change, very frequently you don't know. So like this is par for the course from my perspective. When they make all sorts of changes, they very rarely explain why. I mean, seriously, they really don't. But I could understand if I'm a developer, especially if I have open communication with Ripple, getting blindsided by this and be like, wait, what? I can understand somebody who's from the developer side of things, how they would get frustrated, whereas somebody like me who is just reading what Ripple is doing and being a fly on the wall and understanding that I usually don't know the rationale for all the stuff that they do because they're not going to let it out there. Not all of it. Not all the time. I was just like, oh, okay, well, I'm glad they're doing this. I'm glad they had the change of heart. But anyway, so David continues and he says, why the sudden change? As many pointed out, I focused on the fixed functionality of the XRP ledger and EVM sidechain at Apex earlier this year. I genuinely didn't see how smart contracts on mainnet would work without turning XRPL into a different chain. I had conversations in the past few weeks with Orchestra Finance and others in the community that made me recognize that programmability on mainnet can work if key challenges are addressed, like ledger bloat, transactions per second loss, and bugs/exploits. I think the best way to mitigate these risks is to take a small steps that lead in the right direction, and it's great to have the historical data of how Hooks has worked on Zahao. I fully acknowledge that plenty of smart minds came to this conclusion that programmability makes sense for a mainnet much earlier. Why now? Besides the above, we also felt it made sense to share our thinking ahead of the XRP community gatherings in Korea and Japan this week, because these are important in-person chances to discuss programmability. This is honestly the only reason for the timing. There is no hidden agenda. We have and will continue to be transparent about what we're thinking. We're committed to regular community calls, design reviews with external community members/stakeholders, blog posts explaining considerations, thought process, and many designs we propose. And so there you go. Bottom line, I'm glad this happened. I understand why Wietse feels the way that he says. I don't think it's unreasonable. I also don't think that there were bad intentions. It's just, missed opportunity to upfront say, hey, here's why we changed our mind. Now, that's out there. I just shared it with you. David Schwartz is articulating, okay, he's been convinced. Here is why. So happy to see that. I was never going to jump to, hey, they didn't say why they've changed their minds. There must be something sinister at play. Like, I didn't go there anyway. But again, like I said a minute ago, I understand why somebody that's in the developer community might take this a bit differently. I totally get it. So that's the latest. Like I said, I promised I was going to cover some of this stuff here, coming up soon, and now I have. If there are, and I assume there will be, interesting and important developments for anybody within the XRP ecosystem, even if you're just like me and just a little fly on the wall, just a little investor guy, I'll be happy to continue updating you on what's going on here. But I will just tell you, big picture, I'm very excited for this because it is one more thing, if this works, and I don't know why it wouldn't, I mean, outside of disaster area stuff, this is one more thing that will help to ensure the long-term viability of XRP and the XRP ledger. You'll love to see it. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.